Hi, Mike Shamadan here, the Division Chief, the Training Academy now. Today we're going to show you a short video about an incident that happened down south. It's timely, it's important, it's all about how we communicate with PD, so give it its due attention and have a safe shift.
(998) 7719 South 48th Lane, 998 7748 South 48th Lane, excuse me. Switch to ADEC.
999. Officer down.
Got a 999, copy. 7719 South 48th Lane. It's going to be on Charlie Deck 8, 1504.
Get us fire, officer down, get us fire.
Fire's rolling.
I think we can all say May 18th was pretty much a very tragic day for our city in the line of duty death of Officer Glasser. However, I do have to say that while he ultimately didn't survive his injuries, the interoperability communications between our two departments that day probably gave him the best chance of survival and helped ensure the safety of the responding crew members coming into a very active scene.
Our first response was to talk to the crew and let them know that it sounded like this was an officer-involved shooting and it was one of the officers involved. And by the traffic on the PD channel, we couldn't tell how many were truly involved. So I was feeding the crew a little more information and getting ready for what we were going to do. I heard the activity that was going on the scene. I heard their communications about that they had an officer down and that they were going to be moving him to 48th Lane and Baseline.
So when I arrived on scene, I took a command position at about 48th Lane, I believe it was, in Baseline. And as I had arrived, Officer Glasser had been extracted from the hot zone back to Baseline Road, which is where Captain Johnston and the responding crew members were at, and immediately began treatment.
It sounded like they were moving outside of the danger zone or the hot zone of the incident, so we had agreed that we were going to go on in, not stage, because it did sound like the officer was critically injured, and we chose to go directly where they were bringing him. We realized that our time with the patient was going to be limited if we staged a quarter mile, half mile away. We decided that it was the best decision for that officer's well-being to continue into the scene immediately to where they were located and begin treatment of the patient. As we arrived on scene, the first thing we found is they were just now beginning to remove him from their vehicle, and they just started CPR on him. As we got out, I gave an on-scene report. Traffic was heavy on, I believe it was Channel 8 at the time. They moved it to Channel 12 for us, and I went ahead and gave my additional on-scene report so incoming crews could understand what was happening. Advised them that we did have a trauma code and a CPR was in progress. I immediately got off the truck as the crew started ACLS on our patient, started working on Officer Glasser. I immediately got off and identified the first sergeant I could see on scene and began to communicate with him about the number of patients that we did have. Transport and treatment started pretty quickly. Joseph Pacheco, who was the other firefighter paramedic on the truck, he did a phenomenal job of getting Officer Glasser. The IV started, getting him intubated, CPR maintained the whole time. Rescue 57, I believe, was our first rescue on scene, and they were there pretty quickly. We were able to get him treated and transported into the ambulance and en route to St. Joe's pretty quickly.
As the shift commander that day, I don't exactly remember specifically hearing the crews on our frequency, but I felt confident in the training that we've done thus far between our two departments that they were on our frequency and knew what it is that we had going on.
Even though we had a bad outcome and Officer Glasser didn't survive his injuries, I think it was very important that we were able to communicate closely with PD the whole time. Even though we heard him on the radio, one of the benefits to the call was once I arrived on scene, I was able to tie in with the lieutenant that was in command of their call, and we were together throughout 90% of the call. We were able to communicate what we needed and what he needed from us all together. There was no break in communication at any time during the incident. And I could say on that call, if we would have staged, by the time with all the communications both on our channel and their channel, there would have been a reasonable delay before we would have got to the patient. And I'm glad that we had that availability of communication so we could be right there for them. we have the ability to get on a PD channel and ask for assistance immediately, we're taking away those 2 or 3 additional steps of phone calls and communications between our dispatch center and theirs. We're having immediate contact with them. It works on 962s as well. When you're looking for folks to show up, you can get on their channel right away and ask if there's an officer responding, and 9 times out of 10, one of them's going to get on the radio and let us know, hey, PD at Engine 29, we're about 5 minutes out, we're just around the corner. They're very good at communicating. They're there to help us, we're there to help them. It's a great resource to have available to us.
I think it was important for us as a family in any situation like that to know, did we do everything that we could possibly do to try and save his life? And I think if I've been fortunate to be able to talk with the family and sit with the family and attend numerous events with the family, that I think that they understood that we did everything we possibly could have done that day to try and save his life. And if it weren't for the rescue efforts of the actual officers on scene when it initially happened, in addition to the responding crew members, Dave probably still wouldn't have been able to be an organ donor to this day. So, hats off to them for allowing him to continue to live on and be a hero to so many other people in Arizona by being an organ donation member. Those company officers that are designating a crew member to be on the frequency, it's kind of funny because some of the firefighters now are starting to use police codes, but by no means do we expect that from our fire friends. Again, plain English is fine. Who are you, where are you at, and what do you need? Again, we have those joint responses together for emergency traffic that occurs in the city, but for all of your daily medical responses, your check welfares, and the other calls that you guys have to go on, just being on that PD frequency, should something happen where you need immediate assistance, is critical because you have that one-on-one direct communications to the officers in the precinct, and it will generate a faster response for you. I think this day and age, we can just all agree so much is going on in the world as well as in our own state that the police-fire partnership is critical for the safety of the community and for the safety of police officers and firefighters. And being able to have that inter-op communication helps us ensure that we're out there doing the best job that we can for the community, and again, being as safe as we possibly can at the same time.
Always have a radio on your tactical channel with PD. It's on your MCT on every call. Have one person on that channel at all times. Have the radio on. Be able to communicate to them. Their dispatchers are no different than ours. If we let them know who we are and what we need and where we are, they'll get somebody there for us immediately, and vice versa. We'll be able to hear what their needs are, and our first do as well. We're very fortunate here that we have an excellent relationship with our PD partners. We should be very appreciative of that, and we should also continue to progressively grow that. And with our younger members, having them get on those PD channels and work on those radios now we're building a trend within our department that'll last.